I'm looking for really great entrepreneurs that are looking to build things that are attracting and changing large markets, whether existing ones or things that are just building completely new businesses, sectors, or markets. And I like people who do it with technology, kind of something that is defensible and proprietary.
All right, this is another episode of the Founders Pack Form Your Own Pack podcast. My guest today is a friend also, Moran Kochva, and I said his name wrong probably, but how are you doing, Moran?
It's okay, we'll survive.
We will survive. I need to learn to speak Hebrew.
I think that would be tough. I can say one thing. I have a pretty unique name, and my last name is the name of the most famous, I think, Jewish rebel. Oh. So I'm all about defiance and rebellious and kind of the startup mentality. So, yeah.
I love it. All right. And and for people that don't know, you are with Unison Capital, and that's a venture family office, or the other way around?
Family office, yeah. Yeah, it's a venture firm, but we work under a family office kind of structure.
Terrific. All right. So for people that don't know, who is Moran and what is Unison?
So I'm originally, again, with my name and accent, I'm Israeli. Kind of started... I'm one of those people who moved from the entrepreneurial venture in Israel to becoming an investor in the States. And I'm mostly focused, my old joke is that I'm a boring investor for boring companies. I hope I'm not that boring, but it kind of, over time, I discovered that consumer facing and out of what a lot of people see as cool stuff is just actually pretty complicated. In reality, there's much more competition. And once you're in the boring things in life, kind of more deep tech, enterprise-facing businesses, you actually have a pretty substantial, if you have a great team doing that, you have a pretty substantial advantage over most others. And I think that's the entire trick in our business. You want an unfair advantage.
And then, so you mentioned that Unison is a family venture office or a venture arm that comes out of a family office. What sort of, how did you get started in that, and who started it, and why did they start it?
So I was involved with a bunch of venture funds and venture groups, worked pretty closely with people that came from the Teal Mafia. And basically at a certain time, I went on my own and created Unison Capital as my investment arm.
Cool. So now you mentioned the Teal Mafia. So really part of the PayPal Mafia. Is that kind of what you're referencing?
Yeah. But I came from the Teal side. I mean, I was not involved in PayPal at all. So, and I'm coming from that side.
Okay. So that's interesting, because one of the things that we reference is obviously we're building Founders Pack as a way that founders can help founders, and we advocate them creating small packs of cooperative ventures. So from your time at Teal, or your involvement in that, what did you learn from that around supporting people, competition, and investing?
Oh, there's a lot. Let me focus on one thing now. I think that, and it's for lesser extent this day, but the ability to work through this, I'll use your term, of a pack, is a very, very useful thing. I think the idea in a startup is actually to maximize and optimize your network in order to achieve the best results you can. And I think that that's the place where, again, and that's actually the advantage of people who are coming from good places, let's call it that way, because they have networks that can elevate them to do more interesting stuff. So access is actually, a very, very important part, I think, especially for startups. Because what access can give you is something that money cannot give you. Or if you need to use money, you'll have to spend much more of it in order to accomplish the same thing.
That makes total sense. And I think that's consistent with what we talk about, which is two things. One, which is, building out your network of partnerships and contacts so that you can scale through that, as well as community. Because I think my thesis says, and that you're kind of validating that, is that money is important, but you also want to try to bring the cost of acquisition closer to zero with introductions.
Yeah, I actually am building kind of a new term, so I'll use it here and maybe try to push it forward. I call it a blowfish strategy.
Okay.
Which, if you're familiar with the blowfish, what they basically do, they use, a bit of air in order to look bigger. Now, in their case, the idea is basically to show larger and more scary to potential predators. I think the same works for a startup. The entire kind of idea of a startup is to be larger, to look larger, in order to be able to actually to compete with, with pretty large market players. And I think that the companies and the entrepreneurs that do it the best are the ones who are able to do it almost naturally, that they constantly think very cheap, but they find every free trick in the book or even create new tricks that don't exist in the book in order to be seen that way. And that's, I think, one of the major differentiations that we'll see from now on. And to a certain extent, I think what happens now in Twitter is a good example for that, is even in startups, and again, Twitter is not a startup, but even in startup, we have a development of fat and inefficiencies. And I think that in the last, decade where, interest rates were very low, it was really easy just to go to venture capitalists and basically cover your burn rate through that.
Right.
I think now we have to go back to a world where companies are looking to reach profitability. And basically the first thing is break even. And the way to do it is don't spend much and accomplish as much as you can without actual cash spending. And that's a place where access, creating a community, like one of the things that I always thought is very indicative of that is, those secretive entrepreneurs, the one that come and, they are not willing to tell you anything.
Yeah, sign an NDA.
Sign NDA, sign 20 NDAs. The reality is, I think that's the counter intuitive way to build a startup. Actually.
I agree.
So if it's actually interesting, because if you have something that is so unique, you actually have a major moat. So you don't need to ask it. If it's so complicated, the fact that you'll ask me to sign up and NDA will not change anything because you have a real moat. On the other hand, if you sit with Jeff Bezos and like, I'm just going to start selling books online, you're like, okay, well, I don't need you to tell me that. But then the complication is, of course, in building it. And again, that's something that an NDA will not cover. So the really good entrepreneurs understand that it's all about the activity. And it's actually better for you to do much more community of that. Bring people in. Don't try to push people out. Don't try to say, oh, I have a secret. No, just say, hey, come over. I would like to get your help. I'm willing to do things for that. And being friendly is one thing, and just constantly thinking about how to increase the network, how to make this a family is something that's very important. You need to have as many friends, as many allies as you can in order to build your ventures.
What sort of ventures do you typically like to invest in, and what is your thesis?
So the bottom line, as I said, is boring ventures, but the short end of it is, I'm looking for really great entrepreneurs that are looking to to build things that are attracting and changing large markets, whether existing ones or things that are just building completely new businesses, sectors, or markets. And I like people who do it with technology, kind of something that is defensible and proprietary. Eventually, and again, as we said before, like you can do amazing things that have no real technology. We tend to use the word technology way too often these days, but technology does mean something. And eventually, technology is a major moat for businesses. So if you have something that is technologically, superior to everyone else, you have something. We can see it nowadays with ChatGPT, of course. Like you see that they came and hey, what they do. Although you can already see the scenes, and you can see how, like for example, I tried to play with it and ask it to make different jokes. There's no all the comedians are not wearing. Dave Chappelle is not sitting at home crying, at least for now, because AI cannot make good jokes. All the jokes came out between lame to just not funny.
I think we decided we're going to be doing a weekly feature where we ask ChatGPT a unique question. We publish the answer as part of our premium newsletter. So keep an eye on that. I think it's going to be interesting to see what it does. When you're, when you talk to founders, you obviously have criteria to look for them. If you could offer founders only one piece of advice, what would that advice be?
Exactly what maybe I said before. Be open, be very efficient, and maybe one of the most important things, remember that eventually you need to put your company, you need to think of a company as an organ, or before you. So and then once you do that, a culture in the early stage is very, very important, because the culture will continue with the company for much longer, in many cases, than even the entrepreneur's involvement with that company. And company that has a great culture tend to do well. And companies with kind of problematic culture, in some cases, they're still successful, but in a lot of other cases, they fail. Yeah.
If there was only one sector that, if you could only make one more investment for the rest of your life, and there was one sector or one company that you could do that in looking forward that you're kind of aware of, what would that be?
Right now, I'm not investing there, but I would look into something in biotech that focus on improving kind of quality of life.
Okay.
I think that's a big deal, but it's not what I do. In what I do, I think I would focus, the one thing would be in renewable energy.
That makes sense. Well, I'm pretty excited for the future, and I think there are some exciting developments. So I appreciate you sharing. Kind of the biotech thing makes total sense, and I think there are legitimate breakthroughs there, and there's opportunities. So that's great to hear that you're keeping an eye on that. I do want to be conscious of your time, because I know we could talk all day. Is there anything we haven't touched on that you think that we should?
Ooh, a lot. But let's end on a positive note. So it's I think that we can all agree that last year, 2022, that just ended, was challenging, and I'm not sure. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm not sure this year, 2023, would be substantially better. But in our business, which is the business of innovation and the future, we're good, because we're looking ahead. We're not, we can skip 1 or 2 years and focus on 5-year increments, or 3-year increments, or maybe even a decade in increments. And once you think about it in that context, there's a lot of interesting stuff to do. And I think that if I would be, someone, an entrepreneur looking to do something interesting today, I would actually look at automation as a major trend for the next decade, maybe 2. And I think that's going to be a substantial change. Again, going back to ChatGPT we mentioned earlier, it just shows us where we can take automation and AI platforms to the next decade.
I totally agree with that. As the author of Automate and Grow, not to plug it.
You see, and you didn't even incentivize
to talk about set that up.
Exactly. Automate and grow. Perfect.
Yeah. I love it. All right, Moran, I really appreciate you joining me today. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn, probably.
Okay. No? We will include that in the show notes. All right. So the final thing is, as you know, when we have interesting people on the Form Your Own Pack podcast, we like you to nominate other interesting people that are either investors or founders of scalable ventures. Who would you like to nominate as a future guest?
Who would I like to nominate as a future guest? No, so many. Now I'm thinking
someone you know.
You know what? I'll go with actually a fellow investor.
Okay.
Shane Feldberg is one of the most energetic, dynamic, exciting, and excitable, young investors that I know of. Okay. And I would nominate him.
Awesome. All right. Well, Shane, you've been nominated
as a hot seat.
And I love the description of Shane. So he's got a lot to live up to, but I'm sure he will match that energy.
Oh, you'll see. He's a fast speaker. He's good.
Awesome. That is great. All right, Moran, thank you so much for sharing your insight, and I appreciate you joining us, and we will stay in touch with you, and we'd love to have you involved in some of our either future pitch events, or we actually will have dinners in New York. So maybe you can join us for dinner.
Absolutely. I can certainly eat.
There we go. We got a match. All right. This has been another episode of the Form Your Own Pack podcast from Founders Pack. We will see you on a future episode of Founders Pack, Form Your Own Pack.